On to our next guest. He is perhaps best known for the hit CBS drama Criminal Minds, but for over a decade, he's been co-hosting the National Memorial Day concert with Gary Sinise. Tonight, he talks about his career, family, and faith. Here's my exclusive interview with Joe Mantegna. Joe, you've been involved in this Memorial Day concert since 2002. How did you get involved initially, and what did you think you were signing up for?
I got involved initially due to my dear friend Charles Durning, the late great actor Charles Durning, who was a World War II veteran himself, a Silver Star recipient, and a dear friend. I'd worked with Charlie numerous times. And at that time we were both doing a television series called First Monday. And he had mentioned to me, he says, you know, I do this concert every year in Washington. We'd like to bring in actors, and would you like to do it with me? And I have to say, I was one of those people where Memorial Day was, you know, it was a weekend set aside for, you know, for Memorial Day. But I had a lot of family that had been in the military, but everybody came back from the conflicts. I had 5 uncles who pretty much raised me, very influential in raising me. All World War II veterans, but they all came back and they never talked much about their service. So it was Memorial Day probably had no more significance to me than to many people who look forward to the Indianapolis 500 and barbecues and everything else.
Yeah, it was just a day to get together with the family and a day off.
Right. But I said, as a favor to Charlie, I said, sure, Charlie, that sounds like an interesting thing. You know, let's see what this National Memorial Day concert is all about. And I mean, to sum it up, doing that concert that year, and I have to remember, this is the Memorial Day right after 9/11. Wow. Doing that concert was profound for me. I mean, it literally set a portion of my life on a different path in a way, because it had such an impact on me. The best way I could describe it is, here I'm standing up on this now a stage, not knowing again what I was in for.
Yeah, getting into.
But I get up on the stage, and in front of me are 250,000 people, let's say, the live audience on the west lawn of the Capitol. I'm looking at the Capitol building. The flag is flying. Next to me are 2 huge movie screens showing planes flying into the World Trade Center. Behind me is the Washington Symphony Orchestra playing Mozart's Requiem. And what I had to do, my job, was to read the words of 4 New York firemen who had all lost their sons as firemen in the World Trade Center. And those 4 retired firemen are sitting in the front row in full dress uniforms with their wives. And as I was saying these words now, I realized, oh, this is not Joe Mantegna, the actor, obviously, anymore. This is something else. And the meaning of Memorial Day, in a way, almost hit me like a ton of bricks, because you look out amongst this multitude of people, and you're seeing some, you know, you're seeing veterans, wounded warriors, people in wheelchairs and things like that, and you start to realize that we're about to probably step off into something pretty big here, right after 9/11, and somebody's going to have to pay for that, and I don't mean financially. And I think it all hit me. And so when I walked off that stage, I was weak in the knees. I literally, it was one of those moments you have in your life where you're like, your legs turn to rubber. And I said to myself, I have to somehow get involved with this. I have this is important.
It's a wake-up call for you.
It was a wake-up call for me.
And the nation.
And the nation. And what it did for me is it took Memorial Day to being I don't want to say insignificant, but I want to say a holiday that was a holiday I'd lumped in with a President's Day and everything else, to what I consider to be the most important holiday we celebrate in this country. I have said it, it is the most important thing I do every year. I mean, because I've been very blessed. I've had a pretty good life. And so, in a way, it's my way of paying back.
You mentioned the pretty great life that you've had. I want to revisit a few moments. I was struck to discover at 8 years old, you were stricken with rheumatic fever. You were in a hospital for 5 months. How did that change your life? How did that mark you?
You know, I'm not sure, because when you're 8 years old, you don't understand things like that. You know, you all of a sudden you wake up with a sore throat, and a doctor shows up, and next thing you know, you're in a hospital, and next thing you know, you're in a children's hospital, a sanitarium, and the next thing you know, you're there for 5 months. Now, I don't think it had a tremendous impact on me then, because you just assume,
you're a kid.
well, this is your kid and this is what happens. But in retrospect, I would think about it, because I know as a fact that there were children, like there would be a kid next to me. I remember there's one boy, he always wore his cowboy boots. He'd fight to wear his cowboy boots to bed. We had about 3 or 4 of us in the room. But then after a few days, he wasn't there anymore. And then I found out later he passed away. And again, it was one of those things that doesn't register, because you're 8 years old and you just think, oh, okay, he's not here anymore, because they don't really fill you in.
Yeah.
So I think it wasn't until later, what I really began to appreciate is what my parents must have gone through. Because here they've got their 8-year-old child in a hospital for 5 months, and you spent 3 months, back then, you spent 3 months just laying in bed.
But they had some kind of productions at the hospital, right, that you were part of?
That was probably my very first, I remember they would do, as you progressively got better, and they would let you come out of bed. Because back then, bed rest was really one of the main things. So for 3 months, you basically stayed in bed. And those last 2 months, you start to do smaller little activities. And I remember they put on some little play. And I remember I had to play a dog. And there was a puppet show. Somebody was doing a puppet show, and as the dog, I had to kind of jump up and grab the puppets. And then I think we did another little skit where I was a fairy, and I had to sprinkle pixie dust on these sleeping children. And I remember they used glitter, and the one girl had her eyes open, and I remember her going like, "Whoa!" waking up like, so I'm blowing the scene here.
Joe, it was a precursor to Criminal Minds. You were
guess it
tormenting
was.
the poor little girl.
But I tell you, after those 2 performances, it never even crossed my mind that I would be an actor. And in other words, that wasn't like I had this moment of like, wow, this is what I want to do the rest of my life.
I'm really good at being a dog.
I was thinking, I'm not very good as a dog. I'm not very good as a pixie. I have to look elsewhere. So it wasn't until I was, let's say I was 8 years old then. It wasn't until about 8 years later, when I was about 16, that I think was the thing that happened that kind of set me off on the path of being an actor.
Now, I read an article where you were raised Catholic, but it really wasn't until the birth of your daughter Mia, which was a premature birth, that you were your faith sort of came to the fore. Do you remember that moment?
Yeah, it's hard to talk about. Yeah, I mean, your first child is born, and it turns out, due to circumstances, they have to do an emergency surgery, and she's born 3 months premature, and she was only 1 pound, 13 ounces. And I remember, we weren't raised in a very, we were Catholics, but my father was not a practicing Catholic really, or neither was my mother, but we went through the motions and things like that. I went to Catholic school for a couple of years, but it was just, I guess because my father had been in such ill health most of his life, he just, I don't know, wasn't on his radar. But I remember that night when my daughter Mia was born at the hospital, and we didn't know if she was going to make it or not. And I remember going into the chapel in the hospital and just walking in there and saying, look, I know I haven't been very good. I haven't been like the star pupil in this school here. But
we've all been there, Joe.
Boy, if there's anything to this, I really need a little help right now. And if we can just, I'm not sure how this is going to turn out, but if at least, if you could just spare her, I'll try to do better.
Yeah.
And she was spared.
Now, your daughter Mia was born with autism. She's now grown. She's a makeup artist.
Well, she went to makeup school. Cause she has a real fascination for it. She'll be 29 years old next month. Her autism still would keep her from probably, she can probably assist somebody and be involved in it some way, but it's still, her language is still very, it's almost like English is like her second language, and we don't know what that first language is. And so in many ways she's 29, in many ways she's 10 years old. When we go to Disneyland, she just wants to meet the princesses, But there's a certain innocence about that too, and a certain, things happen. Look, everybody's got a story. That's my story. But
what did you learn from her? What surprised you about being the parent of an autistic child?
Partly that first of all, that nobody gets a free ride in this life. I don't care who you are. And so these are the cards that I've been dealt in my life. so be it. And what look, if I had a choice, if I could have one wish tomorrow, it would be to take away the autism that my daughter has and let her live a more normal life. Of course I would want that. But that's not going to happen, and it's okay. She's comfortable with it. She's a happy young woman, and the benefits of it. Not, I should say benefits, but some of the positive sides of it. This is a person who does not have abstract emotions like envy, jealousy. She's pure of heart, and so I've learned that. So I mean it. No, my daughter's never going to become a nuclear scientist or anything like that. But she's always going to be a human being who is pure of heart and will never do anything that would harm, even in terms of even a thought to someone else.
Yeah.
There's something to be said about that.
Yeah.
You have been married to Arlene for 41 years now, more than 41
More
years?
than that. 1975. I don't know the math. I don't know what that is.
What's the secret to this marriage?
I don't know.
I mean, all marriages are a challenge, but
I look at it this way. Marriage is like being on a roller coaster. And
without the belt.
Without the belt. And what you have to do is hang on to the rail. Now, there's going to be times when the thing's going to try to fly you out of the roller coaster. And you have that choice. You fly out of the roller coaster, and what would most likely happen is you're going to land in another roller coaster. So you have to make the decision, is this ride, is this worth it? Can I get through the scary part here?
Right.
And what you can find is that you get through that scary turn, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh wow, and this is the fun part of the ride.
Right.
Oh, it's getting a little scary again. Well, but no, okay. So this is the choice we've made. So yeah, I mean, I would be lying to say that every moment has always been, perfect and no problems. But we both mutually made that decision that, look, this is the ride we're taking. Because when we got on with good intentions. In other words, we looked at it and said, yeah, we want to take this ride.
Let's take this ride.
So don't let the curves scare you any more than anything else.
What do you want people to see and come away with after watching the concert this year?
What I want them to come away with is what I want them to come away with every year, which is that, oh, this is why we have Memorial Day, and this is why it's so important, and this is why it's so important that we respect and honor and do what we can for our servicemen and women, past, and present, and future. Because, it almost is a cliche, freedom isn't free, but it's absolutely 100% true. So look, we're not a perfect society. America has its faults, but if you look around this planet, we're a beacon of light to everybody else. We are what everybody, for the most part, aspire to be, if they have any sense at all. All you have to do is look at our Constitution. Our framework is there. It's right. We won't have a freedom of speech, there are all these different freedoms. We can, every few years we're able to peacefully go out and change our government, which in itself is an amazing
miracle
thing.
Yeah.
Free press, all these things, they don't come cheaply, unfortunately, and somebody pays the price more than others, and that's our military. So I want people to come away with that, like, enjoy your holiday, but don't forget who made it possible.
Again, the National Memorial Day concert is live from Washington, D.C. on Sunday, May 27th at 8 p.m. Eastern Time on PBS. It's co-hosted by both Joe and Gary Sinise, so don't miss it.